The old records say that true strength is revealed not when a hero raises his sword, but when an entire sect stands behind his name. Chu Feng has returned to the Cyanwood Mountain, and those who once doubted him have just witnessed the terrifying gap between legend and reality. Come closer, the tea is still warm, and the storyteller has barely finished sharpening his brush. Tonight's tale has everything a wandering cultivator could ask for. Old grudges forgiven, a hidden danger from the dark hall, and a mysterious Long Lin demanding Chu Feng cut through a prison no ordinary warrior could survive. What began as a rescue for Yao'er will soon uncover a secret about Chu Feng's heavenly bloodline, and a strange space where a year of struggle passes in only a heartbeat. Before Chu Feng dissolved the Asura division, its ranks had already swelled to nearly 10,000 disciples. Yet, when he ordered the division disbanded, he left behind a single promise. If the Asura division ever rose again, every former member could return without facing another examination.
When the Asura division was rebuilt, many returned. Others were simply too ashamed to come back. But among all those former members, only 187 earned a kind of respect that ordinary disciples could never imitate. Those 187 were the people who refused to abandon the Asura division when it was pushed into its darkest hour.
That distinction could not be bought with contribution points, cultivation resources, or status. It had been forged at the moment when standing beside Chu Feng meant accepting danger rather than glory. Their honor existed precisely because they had chosen him before anyone knew whether he would rise or fall.
Their judgment was incredible. When nearly everyone else abandoned Chu Feng, they were willing to remain beside him even at the risk of their lives.
Envy still flickered in Ma Hu's eyes, but Li Qing and Xianxia felt something deeper. Toward those 187 names, they now carried genuine respect. The three followed Jiang Furong toward the main lecture hall, questioning her eagerly about the disciples who had remained loyal during that crisis. Astonishingly, Jiang Furong remembered every single one. One name after another left her lips, as though those people had been carved permanently into her memory. She had personally witnessed the days when Bai Yunxiao, Tao Xiangyu and the others forced Chu Feng's Asura division into desperation. Because she had seen that pressure with her own eyes, she understood better than most what the loyalty of those 187 truly meant.
Senior sister Jiang, who were senior brother Chu Feng's enemies back then.
There were many. Bai Yunxiao, Tao Xingyu, Ben Leihu, and Kai Yanyu were all his enemies at the time.
Them aren't they members of the Asura division now?
Isn't it obvious Chu Feng became powerful, so they switched sides and entered his camp? Senior brother Chu Feng was far too generous. They once opposed him, yet instead of settling old grudges, he still allowed them to stand beneath his protection.
Zhao Xue's anger was unmistakable. To her, attacking Chu Feng in his weakness and relying on him after his rise sounded like shameless opportunism.
No, that isn't why they joined. They entered the Asura division because Chu Feng saved their lives. He saved mine as well. We joined because we were grateful to him.
The three newcomers were stunned. They had expected revenge, perhaps even ruthless retaliation. Instead, they learned that after suffering beneath those very people, Chu Feng had later chosen to save them.
Surprising, isn't it? He was just as surprised back then. But perhaps this is what it means to place the greater good above personal resentment. Junior brother Chu Feng once said that fellow disciples could fight among themselves however they wished, but when an outside enemy appeared, they were still fellow disciples and had to stand together.
That principle revealed something more important than simple kindness. Chu Feng could distinguish private grudges from collective survival. In the martial world, where pride often creates enemies faster than blades can kill them, such restraint was itself a kind of strength. Li Qing, Ma Hu, and Zhao Xue exchanged glances. They could not fully understand such a way of thinking yet, but their admiration for Chu Feng had unquestionably deepened. At the very least, none of them believed they possessed that same breadth of mind.
Senior sister Jiang, I heard that senior brother Chu Feng originally came from the southern Cyanwood forest. What has become of that place now?
The question was natural. By now, nearly everyone connected to Chu Feng seemed to be receiving extraordinary benefits. Yet the southern Cyanwood forest had once been merely a subsidiary power beneath Cyanwood Mountain, hardly an organization that inspired awe.
The southern Cyanwood forest, it no longer exists.
It no longer exists.
The entire southern Cyanwood forest relocated to Cyanwood Mountain. Regardless of cultivation, all of its elders became elders of Cyanwood Mountain, and all of its disciples became Cyanwood Mountain disciples.
A subsidiary power was absorbed directly into Cyanwood Mountain.
The three could only marvel. There was no need for anyone to explain why such treatment had been granted. Chu Feng's name alone had changed the fate of the power from which he came. From an overlooked subsidiary force to direct incorporation into Cyanwood Mountain, this was the weight of a single disciple's achievements. Chu Feng had risen so high that his influence was no longer limited to himself. It had begun rewriting the status of everyone connected to his past. But just as Jiang Furong and the others neared the main lecture hall, a violent whistle tore through the air. A figure plummeted from the sky and smashed into the ground with a thunderous impact. Even the specially refined stone beneath him cracked apart from the force.
Bai Xiao.
Shock swept through the surrounding disciples. The man lying amid the shattered stones was indeed Bai Xiao. His face had turned pale, blood spilled from his mouth, and his injuries were clearly severe. Bai Xiao was no ordinary disciple. His own strength was formidable, and within the Asura division he held an officer-level position. To injure him so openly was almost the same as striking the Asura division across the face. Even many elders would hesitate before creating such a conflict. Every gaze rose toward the sky. 5 silhouettes stood above the crowd. They were the ones who had defeated Bai Xiao.
Does Cyanwood Mountain not possess even a single disciple capable of fighting?
The bald man leading the 5 swept his eyes over the crowd with undisguised contempt.
It's them.
You recognize them.
We do. They're core disciples of the Heavenly Law Palace. But why would they come to Cyanwood Mountain? And why would they attack one of Cyanwood Mountain's disciples?
Li Qing, Ma Hu, and Zhao She had come from the Overlord domain and had once encountered those 5 by chance. Jiang Furong, however, had never seen any of them before. They were among the people who had only joined Cyanwood Mountain that very day. More troubling was their strength. Jiang Furong herself was a rank 1 half-martial emperor, yet she could not perceive the cultivation of any of the 5. There was only one reasonable conclusion. Every one of them stood above Jiang Furong in cultivation. This was no ordinary group of arrogant newcomers. Their confidence was backed by genuine strength.
Did all of you come here deliberately to cause trouble?
To Jiang Furong, their intentions seemed obvious. The world was vast, and not everyone who heard Chu Feng's legendary achievements responded with admiration. Some worshipped him as the greatest genius of their generation. Others refused to believe the stories at all. From time to time, skeptics came to Cyanwood Mountain specifically to challenge its disciples and test whether Chu Feng's reputation was deserved. Usually, those people were beaten severely and expelled. This time was different. Jiang Furong's expression grew increasingly grave. The 5 men hovering above them possessed strength far beyond the ordinary challengers who had appeared before.
Cause trouble. No, we didn't come here for that. We merely heard that this was the power Chu Feng belonged to. His name is famous throughout the holy land of martialism, and some people even call him the strongest member of the younger generation, despite his withdrawal from the strongest younger generation battle assembly at the Gongba Plain. With so many stories surrounding him, I naturally assumed Cyanwood Mountain's disciples would be impressive. Otherwise, how could a person like Chu Feng have emerged from this place? So I came to see for myself, and what I found was extremely disappointing. Cyanwood Mountain appears to be nothing special. As for Chu Feng, perhaps all those glorious achievements of his are merely exaggerated rumor.
His mocking laughter echoed through the air, and the atmosphere below instantly erupted.
Bastard exclamation, you dare insult senior brother Chu Feng, you clearly came here looking for trouble.
Angry shouts rose from every direction. Even numerous elders had rushed from their residences, yet after seeing the situation, they hesitated to intervene. Conflicts between disciples were common within Cyanwood Mountain. Battles over positions on the Cyanwood succession list could become especially fierce, so elders normally avoided interfering without sufficient reason. There was another, more painful reason. The overall strength of Cyanwood Mountain's elders was not particularly overwhelming. If disciples lost to outside challengers, Cyanwood Mountain would merely suffer embarrassment. But if the elders entered the fight and were defeated as well, that embarrassment would become humiliation for the entire sect. Their restraint was not cowardice. It was the cold calculation of people who understood exactly how dangerous the balance of reputation had become. Thus the elders could only remain where they were, hoping that a true expert of Cyanwood Mountain would soon appear and break the deadlock.
You can insult us disciples. You can even insult Cyanwood Mountain. But I will not allow you to insult Chu Feng.
Anger finally overwhelmed restraint. Jiang Farong drew her incomplete imperial armament, shot into the sky, and unleashed a fierce assault toward the 5 intruders. But before her weapon could display its might, the bald man casually reached out. His hand closed directly around Jiang Farong's incomplete imperial armament. In the next instant, overwhelming oppressive might erupted from his body and locked Jiang Farong firmly in place.
Rank 4 Half-Martial Emperor.
Shock crashed through the crowd. No one had expected the bald man to possess the cultivation of a rank 4 half-martial emperor, a level already terrifyingly powerful among members of the younger generation. The faces of both elders and disciples darkened. The gap was now painfully clear. Jiang Farong, a rank 1 half-martial emperor, had been suppressed almost instantly. Against a rank 4 half-martial emperor, 3 entire levels separated them, and within the half-martial emperor realm such a difference was far from trivial. At that moment, Cyanwood Mountain truly seemed to have no disciple present who could confront him. A dreadful question settled over the crowd. Was Cyanwood Mountain really about to endure this humiliation before everyone?
Listen carefully. Your Cyanwood Mountain disciples are nowhere near qualified to teach me a lesson.
His words had barely fallen when a new voice suddenly thundered across the area, cutting straight through the oppressive silence. And with only one sentence, the entire balance of the scene seemed ready to change. The challenger had asked whether Cyanwood Mountain possessed anyone capable of fighting. Now someone had answered.
Is that so? Then let me try.
The voice thundered across the sky like a war drum splitting the clouds. Before the echo faded, a figure appeared above Cyanwood Mountain and calmly stepped through the air, arriving beside Jiang Farong, as if the heavens themselves had opened a path for him. The instant that figure came into view, disciples and elders alike froze where they stood. No one moved, no one spoke. It was as though the entire mountain had been sealed in stone.
Chu Feng exclamation quickly. Look exclamation, it's Chu Feng. Chu Feng has returned.
Only after a long silence did the crowd awaken from its shock. Then excitement erupted like a tide breaking through a dam, roaring from every corner of the Cyanwood Mountain. Chu Feng, to Cyanwood Mountain, that name was not merely a name. It was a banner raised against humiliation, a legend carved into the hearts of disciples, a source of pride for elders who had watched the sect rise from danger into prosperity. Everyone knew one truth. Cyanwood Mountain's current glory had not descended from fortune alone. It had been won through Chu Feng's storms, Chu Feng's battles, and Chu Feng's impossible victories. His return was not the return of a disciple. It was the return of the person who had changed the sect's fate. The bald disciple from the Heavenly Law Palace stared at him, and the arrogance that had filled his face moments ago began to crack. The four people behind him also became tense, their hands tightening around their weapons.
Chu Feng, you are Chu Feng.
The baldy who had spoken so wildly before could not help stepping back. He could not see Chu Feng's cultivation, yet one glance was enough to tell him this was no ordinary opponent. Chu Feng's bearing was deep and steady, like a blade hidden beneath still water. Even the most outstanding disciples of the Heavenly Law Palace possessed only a fraction of that pressure. Compared to him, their so-called peak talents seemed dim.
I am indeed Chu Feng. Didn't you say there was no one in Cyanwood Mountain who could fight you in that case? You wouldn't mind sparring with me, right?
The baldy's pride had already been shaken, but he had come too far to retreat in front of everyone. His eyes hardened, and he forced his courage to the surface.
Come at me, then! Exclamation. We traveled all this way for one reason, to shatter every rumor about you, and let the world know those stories are fake.
As he spoke, he released Zhang Furong's incomplete Imperial armament and drew his own. Behind him, the other four Heavenly Law Palace disciples also summoned their incomplete Imperial armaments, releasing fierce oppressive might into the air. All four were rank 4 half-martial emperors. These people had not come blindly. They had come prepared, armed, and confident, determined to crush the legend of Chu Feng in the very land that revered him. But preparation only matters when the battlefield is equal. Against ordinary disciples, 5 rank 4 half-martial emperors with incomplete imperial armaments would be terrifying. Against Chu Feng, who had already stepped into the realm of a rank 1 martial emperor, their formation was like a row of candles raised before a thunderstorm. Suddenly, Chu Feng's eyes flashed. A boundless oppressive might surged out from him and swept across the entire region. It did not roar like theirs. It descended, heavy, absolute, irresistible. The oppressive might of the 5 Heavenly Law Palace disciples vanished in an instant, swallowed like 5 narrow brooks pouring into a vast sea. Then even the weather changed. The cloudless sky darkened. Violent winds screamed across the mountain. Black clouds gathered overhead, as if heaven itself had sensed Chu Feng's anger and lowered its gaze. The 5 Heavenly Law Palace disciples stood frozen in place. Their bodies could not move. Their chests could not rise. Not even breathing remained under their control. This was no ordinary suppression. Chu Feng did not need to attack, did not need to draw a weapon, and did not need to prove himself through technique. The difference in cultivation alone had already decided the battle. In the martial world, when the gap becomes this wide, courage turns into silence, and weapons become decoration. Zhang Furong and the other Cyanwood Mountain disciples were shaken as well. They could not tell exactly what level Chu Feng had reached, but they could feel the terrifying power pressing over the land.
That aura is so terrifying. Exactly what level of cultivation is junior brother Chu Feng at now?
Before Chu Feng, those 5 challengers were not even qualified to launch an attack. Then a man's voice cut through the storm of astonishment.
Rank 1 Martial Emperor. That is the aura of a rank 1 Martial Emperor. Chu Feng. He is already a rank 1 Martial Emperor.
When the disciples turned and saw the speaker, shock struck them once again. The one who had spoken was none other than Cyanwood Mountain's headmaster, Dugu Xingfeng.
Rank 1 Martial Emperor Lord Headmaster, personally declared it! Chu Feng is actually a rank 1 Martial Emperor. Heavens! Wouldn't that mean Chu Feng is as powerful as Lord Headmaster? Are you stupid? Chu Feng fought the 4 great imperial clans' clan chiefs by himself, and even killed the Ximen imperial clan's clan chief. Chu Feng has already surpassed Lord Headmaster. Right now, even the utmost exalted elders of the 4 great imperial clans might not be his match.
The crowd's words revealed how much the balance of power had shifted. Chu Feng was no longer merely a genius nurtured by Cyanwood Mountain. He had become a measuring rod for the entire younger generation, a figure whose strength forced even old powers to be reconsidered. Just as everyone trembled before his power, Chu Feng withdrew his oppressive might with a single thought. The dark clouds scattered, the fierce wind calmed. The unstable sky returned to its original brightness, as if nothing had happened. With one thought, Chu Feng had changed the weather. With another, he restored it. The moment the pressure vanished, 5 dull sounds rang out one after another. The 5 Heavenly Law Palace disciples, led by the Baldy, dropped to their knees before Chu Feng.
Junior brother Chu Feng, we were wrong! We were foolish to doubt your strength. Please give us a chance. Please, since we are now disciples of Cyanwood Mountain, give us a chance to turn over a new leaf.
They begged without stopping. Chu Feng had not even struck them, yet they had already understood the truth. This was a super expert who could take their lives with a single thought. The gap between them and Chu Feng was not a narrow road, it was heaven and earth. Even the strongest disciple of the Heavenly Law Palace would not be Chu Feng's match. This was the moment the rumor became reality before every eye. Chu Feng's title as the strongest member of the younger generation was no longer a tale carried by distant mouths. It stood in the sky, looked down, and made arrogance kneel.
You all actually have the shame to declare yourselves disciples of Cyanwood Mountain. Scram!
Chu Feng waved his sleeve. A gale exploded outward, carrying the force of judgment. Before that wind, the 5 Heavenly Law Palace disciples were blasted thousands of miles away. Their screams faded into the distance, leaving only stunned silence behind. Then Cyanwood Mountain erupted.
Long live junior brother Chu Feng. Junior brother Chu Feng, you are too amazing. Kicking them out was great! You truly helped us vent our anger. Let's see who dares stir up trouble in Cyanwood Mountain now.
The crowd roared with joy. Seeing once was better than hearing 100 rumors. Today, the disciples of Cyanwood Mountain finally saw with their own eyes how terrifying Chu Feng had become. Yet while most cheered, a small number of elders and disciples wore ugly, unnatural expressions. These were the people who had once made things difficult for Chu Feng, humiliated him, or looked down on him. As they remembered their actions from the past, no one needed to scold them. Their own hearts had already spoken. What they had done back then was foolish beyond measure. This is one of the sharpest pleasures of Chu Feng's return. He does not need a long argument to answer old contempt. His existence has become the reply. Every insult thrown at him in the past now returns to its owner as shame. Chu Feng turned to Jiang Furong, his tone easing after the storm.
Senior Sister Jiang, are you all right?
I'm fine. If I'd known you had returned, I wouldn't have done anything.
At that moment, another figure appeared beside Chu Feng as quietly as drifting moonlight. It was Bai Ruochen.
Senior Sister Jiang, do you still remember me?
Junior Sister Bai, you've also returned. This is truly 2 happy occasions, happening at the same time.
Jiang Furong's face brightened with joy. She had not interacted much with Bai Ruochen, but she knew exactly who Bai Ruochen was, the person who had once fought alongside Chu Feng. Then after Bai Ruochen appeared, Bai Xian also stepped into view.
It seems Ruochen is quite well received. I wonder if there is anyone here to welcome me.
The elders and disciples immediately recognized the mother and daughter. Back then, Bai Xian had charged into Cyanwood Mountain to take Bai Ruochen and Chu Feng away. That incident had shaken the sect deeply, and even now, many people still spoke of it.
Welcome. Of course, welcome.
Chu Feng personally stepped forward to receive Bai Suyan. Although he was the headmaster of Cyanwood Mountain, he did not dare neglect Bai Suyan or Bai Ruochen, for he understood their true identities.
Madam, Elder Nangong Longjian has been waiting for you the entire time.
Let's go then.
Bai Suyan nodded. Then Chu Feng, Chu Feng, Bai Ruochen, Bai Suyan, and the others disappeared into the void, leaving for the Cyanwood Sacred Assembly. Only after they vanished did the remaining elders and disciples process what they had heard.
Heavens! Could it be that Bai Ruochen is really Lord Nangong Longjian's daughter?
Stunned expressions spread through those who knew Bai Ruochen and her mother. Only then did they realize how blind they had been. They had failed to recognize the Mount Tai that was Chu Feng. And they had also failed to recognize the Mount Tai that was Bai Ruochen. In this chapter, Chu Feng's return is more than a rescue. It is a public correction of status. The Heavenly Law Palace disciples arrive to expose a myth, but their defeat proves the myth was too small for the truth. Meanwhile, Bai Ruochen's identity quietly deepens the scene, reminding the audience that Cyanwood Mountain has been surrounded by hidden giants from the beginning. And this is why Chu Feng's entrance works so well. He does not simply return stronger, he returns at the exact moment his sect's dignity is being trampled. One sleeve sends the challengers thousands of miles away, but the true impact is larger than that. From this moment on, anyone who wants to provoke Cyanwood Mountain must first remember the name standing behind it. Chu Feng. The moment Chu Feng and his companions returned to the Cyanwood Sacred Assembly, there was no time for ceremony. They moved straight toward the place where Bai Li Xuankong was resting, carrying with them news heavy enough to shake the foundations of the Cyanwood Mountain. At that time, aside from the Compass Immortal, who was outside delivering a lecture, nearly every important figure of the Cyanwood Mountain had gathered there. Chu Feng did not conceal what had happened inside the blood-devouring killing formation. He revealed the strength of the Dark Hall, the terrifying expert standing behind it, and the danger now spreading across the holy land of martialism like an approaching storm.
What Dark Hall's Hallmaster actually possesses the same sort of inherited bloodline as you. The World Devastator Immortal joined the Dark Hall.
Shock swept through the gathering. No one could remain composed after hearing such news. Even Nangong Longjian, a man who had crossed countless dangers and stood among the strongest experts present, furrowed his brow deeply. The reason was brutally simple. The Dark Hall was no longer merely a mysterious faction hiding in the shadows. With experts of that level gathered beneath one banner, it possessed enough strength to threaten powers that had once considered themselves untouchable. If such a force descended upon the Cyanwood Mountain, the defenders here could not confidently stop it. Yet none of them voiced that fear too strongly. They could see that Chu Feng was already carrying burdens far beyond those expected of someone of his generation. Adding their own anxiety to his shoulders would solve nothing.
Ancestor, the ancient era's elves and His Majesty the Elf King have already become allies of our Cyanwood Mountain. To prevent the Dark Hall from taking advantage of our weakness, His Majesty has specially sent the Elf Kingdom's Grand Elder, Lord Xianxia, here to protect the Cyanwood Mountain.
At the name Lord Lianghua, Nangong Longjian's expression changed immediately. A sharp light flashed through his eyes.
Lord Lianghua Chu Feng. Is that truly so?
Absolutely.
When will Lord Lianghua arrive?
Among those gathered, Nangong Longjian had perhaps the broadest experience. He understood what the name Lord Lianghua represented. That Grand Elder was a terrifyingly powerful existence among the ancient era's elves. To Nangong Longjian, Lord Lianghua's presence meant more than another powerful ally. It meant deterrence. With a grand rank 8 martial emperor personally guarding the Cyanwood Mountain, Even the Dark Hall would have to weigh the cost before attacking recklessly. Sometimes the strongest defense was not a formation or an army, but an expert whose very name forced enemies to reconsider.
This old man is already here.
The voice came from empty space. Then the void itself seemed to open, and Lord Lianghua calmly stepped out before them. Everyone except Chu Feng, Bai Ruochen, Bai Suyan, and Jiang Wushang froze in astonishment. Even Nangong Longjian could not hide his reaction. Lord Lianghua's arrival was like a mountain suddenly appearing behind an exhausted army. The tension that had weighed upon their hearts finally loosened. Chu Feng had returned safely. Nangong Longjian's family had been reunited. Now Lord Lianghua himself had arrived to reinforce the Cyanwood Mountain. One joyous event followed another, and for a brief moment the shadow of the Dark Hall seemed farther away. Baili Xuankong originally intended to prepare a celebration feast, but Chu Feng could not remain still long enough to enjoy it. The true reason he had rushed back to the Cyanwood Mountain was Yao'er. For Chu Feng, the matter could not be postponed simply because greater conflicts were unfolding elsewhere. Yao'er was still in Long Lin's hands, and Chu Feng had given his word that he would return after becoming a martial emperor. Power might determine whether one could fulfill a promise, but character determined whether one tried. After learning Chu Feng's intention, Baili Xuankong made his decision without hesitation. He would enter the ancient era's remnants with Chu Feng and meet the mysterious Long Lin once more. This time, however, there was another figure beside them. Lord Lianghua also chose to accompany the group. A Grand Rank 8 Martial Emperor, already approaching the level of a peak Martial Emperor, was not someone who could be ignored anywhere in the holy land of martialism. With Lord Lianghua present, the others naturally gained confidence before confronting Long Lin. They passed through the spirit formation without obstruction, and Chu Feng once again stepped into the depths of the ancient era's remnants. Before long, the familiar territory of Long Lin appeared before them. Then Chu Feng saw Yao'er. The heaviness inside his heart immediately eased. Not only was Yao'er unharmed, her cultivation had advanced dramatically. She was no longer a rank 1 martial emperor. She had already stepped into the realm of a rank 2 martial emperor.
Chu Feng! Lord Bailey.
Overjoyed, Yao'er rushed toward them. What surprised Chu Feng was that Long Lin did not interfere this time. He simply allowed her to reach Chu Feng's side.
Not bad. Your breakthrough speed was even faster than I expected. It seems you are finally capable of helping me.
Long Lin appeared genuinely pleased, yet from beginning to end his gaze remained fixed upon Chu Feng alone. That gaze immediately made Nangong Longjian and the others uncomfortable. Baili Xuankong was there. Nangong Longjian was there. Even Lord Lianghua, the Grand Elder of the ancient era's elves and a Grand Rank 8 martial emperor, stood before him. Yet Long Lin behaved as though none of them existed. This was not ordinary arrogance. A weaker man ignoring such experts would merely be courting death. But when someone like Long Lin did it naturally, without the slightest vigilance or hesitation, the insult carried another meaning. Either he was impossibly reckless, or he truly possessed the strength to disregard them. Nangong Longjian's displeasure rose. He was just about to speak when an aged but powerful hand suddenly closed around his arm. He turned and found Lord Lianghua beside him. Lord Lianghua said nothing. He merely looked at Nangong Longjian and slowly shook his head. That tiny movement struck Nangong Longjian harder than any warning spoken aloud. Lord Lianghua was telling him one thing: do not provoke this man. And when an expert of Lord Lianghua's level considered Long Lin dangerous enough to demand restraint, Nangong Longjian immediately understood the gulf hidden before him. The dissatisfaction in Nangong Longjian's heart did not disappear, but he forced it down. When he looked at Long Lin again, anger had been replaced by caution.
Senior, I have returned according to our agreement. Can you release Yao'er now?
Of course, but only after you help me accomplish one thing.
Senior, please tell me what you need.
Chu Feng remained respectful and vigilant. He did not dare underestimate Long Lin for even an instant. By now, Chu Feng had become a martial emperor himself. He had stood before the Elf King, confronted the Dark Hall's Hallmaster, encountered Lord Xianxia and the World Devastator Immortal, and witnessed some of the Holy Land of martialism's most frightening existences. Yet the sense of danger emanating from Long Lin remained overwhelmingly intense. More unsettling still, Chu Feng felt that Long Lin was even more dangerous than the Dark Hall's Hallmaster. That instinct mattered. Chu Feng had survived countless life-and-death situations precisely because he understood that cultivation realm alone did not reveal everything about an opponent. Long Lin was hiding depths that none of them could presently measure.
It is very simple.
As Long Lin spoke, two objects appeared in his possession. One was a gate, the other was a sword. The gate was transparent, almost like something forged from flawless glass. It stood roughly 2 meters tall and 1 meter wide, yet the aura surrounding it made its simple appearance profoundly mysterious. The sword was entirely different. Red light flickered along its body while waves of heat rolled outward. Forged from fiery metal, the 7-foot blade seemed to contain a furnace within itself. The eyes of everyone present sharpened with astonishment. Neither the gate nor the sword was an incomplete Imperial armament. Neither was an Imperial armament. And yet their value seemed to surpass Imperial armaments entirely. That was what made them truly frightening. The gathered experts had enough experience to recognize the treasures of the Holy Land of martialism, yet these two objects seemed to stand outside that familiar system altogether. Their very existence hinted that Long Lin's origins, and perhaps the secrets of these ancient era's remnants, reached far beyond what the current era understood. Long Lin showed no surprise at their reactions. He seemed to have expected them. Without explaining anything, he walked toward the enormous tree and placed the transparent gate directly against it. His hands began forming seals. Strange words flowed from his mouth in an uninterrupted chant. Then the air trembled. The transparent gate fused into the giant tree as though the two had always belonged together. Light began rippling across the once clear surface, and distorted space slowly formed within the doorway. Long Lin then turned the fiery sword around. Rather than offering Chu Feng the blade, he held it carefully and extended the hilt toward him.
Take this sword and enter. Cut through every vine binding me, and afterward you may take Yao'er away.
The words caused Chu Feng's eyes to narrow.
The vines binding you.
Yes, the vines binding me.
Long Lin smiled, making no effort to conceal the purpose of the task.
Rest assured, if you accomplish this, I will honor my promise.
At last, the hidden shape of their old agreement became clearer. Long Lin had waited specifically for Chu Feng to become a martial emperor, because whatever existed beyond that gate required strength. Chu Feng previously did not possess. That alone proved this was no ordinary act of cutting vines.
I hope Senior will keep his word.
Chu Feng stepped forward and wrapped his hand around the fiery sword's hilt. Then he turned toward the distorted entrance and began walking toward it.
Chu Feng.
Baili Xuankong could no longer suppress his concern. He understood that Long Lin's request could not possibly be as simple as it sounded. If cutting those vines were easy, Long Lin would never have demanded that Chu Feng first reach the martial emperor realm. And there lay the most dangerous part of the situation. Chu Feng was entering a place none of them understood, carrying a mysterious weapon supplied by a man powerful enough to make even Lord Xianxia cautious. Every advantage belonged to Long Lin. Chu Feng had only his strength, his judgment, and the necessity of fulfilling his promise to Yao'er. Chu Feng stopped and looked back at the seniors behind him. There was no panic on his face.
Seniors, please rest assured. I will return safely.
With that, Chu Feng turned away. The fiery sword remained firmly in his hand as he stepped through the mysterious gate. Behind him stood some of the strongest allies he had ever gathered. Ahead of him waited a mystery that even those experts could not see through. And perhaps that was the true weight of this return to the ancient era's remnants. Chu Feng had become a martial emperor, yet the road before him had only grown more unfathomable. Long Lin's restraints were about to be challenged, and whatever those vines were suppressing might change far more than Yao'er's fate alone. The instant Chu Feng passed through the gate, the world before him dissolved into a blur. Light, shadow, and space twisted together, as though he had crossed an invisible boundary separating two completely different worlds. When his vision finally cleared, Chu Feng found himself standing inside an isolated realm far larger than he had imagined. Vines stretched across the vast space like an endless living barricade, overlapping one another until every path ahead was completely sealed. Beneath those vines lay countless talismans. Their surfaces flickered with mysterious light, continuously feeding power into the tangled vegetation and making every vine unnaturally resilient. Yet the vines were not the greatest danger. The moment Chu Feng entered, an overwhelming pressure descended upon him. That force pressed against his flesh, his dantian, and even his soul. Every breath became heavy. His cultivation seemed chained by the formation itself. Flying was impossible, and even taking an ordinary step demanded tremendous effort. To a cultivator, suppressing physical movement was one thing. Suppressing the dantian and soul at the same time was far more terrifying. This meant the power governing this realm was not merely environmental pressure, but something capable of restraining a cultivator from the very foundation of his strength. As a Dragon Mark Royal Cloak world spiritist, Chu Feng immediately recognized the signs. This enormous world was not simply a strange remnant, it was an extraordinary sealing formation. His thoughts rapidly connected the clues. Long Lin had ordered him to cut apart every vine binding him. If these vines belonged to the seal, then the one imprisoned here might very well be Long Lin himself. The realization brought even more questions. Why had Long Lin been sealed inside an ancient era's remnant? How long had he been imprisoned? Was the enormous tree Chu Feng had previously encountered truly Long Lin, or merely something containing the being sealed here? The deeper Chu Feng thought, the more strongly he sensed that Long Lin had deliberately drawn him into this task. Long Lin had never needed Chu Feng merely to enter this place. He needed someone capable of interfering with the seal itself. From that perspective, Chu Feng was not simply a guest completing a favor. He was the key Long Lin intended to use against his prison. But suspicion could not change Chu Feng's decision. Yao'er's fate was tied to his success, and that left him with almost no room to negotiate.
There is no use thinking about it any further. For Yao'er's sake, I have to give everything I have to this task.
He understood perfectly well that Long Lin might be exploiting him. Even so, he chose to move forward. If being used was the price required to save Yao'er, then for now, Chu Feng would pay it. His sword moved. Again and again, Chu Feng hacked into the vines blocking his path. Ordinary sword aura accomplished nothing. The vines were simply too tough. Only when Chu Feng drove his full physical strength through the sword itself could its edge finally sever them. That changed the nature of the challenge completely. Chu Feng could not stand at a distance and clear the way with overwhelming martial power. Every vine demanded a direct strike. Every strike consumed strength, and every step was taken beneath a pressure that constantly fought against him. This was a battle of endurance rather than explosive power. The realm was enormous, yet the vines revealed one important clue. Though countless in number, they all extended toward the same direction. Chu Feng followed that direction. Somewhere ahead, he believed, lay whatever Long Lin truly wanted released. Then time began to pass. 1 month became several months. Several months became an entire year. For the current Chu Feng, losing an entire year was an unbearable price. Beyond this sealed realm stood the Dark Hall, an enemy powerful enough that even a short period could bring unpredictable changes. This was what made the trial so cruel. Chu Feng was not merely exhausted by the vines, he was being tormented by time itself. Every day spent inside could mean another unknown development outside, yet turning back would mean abandoning his chance to save Yao'er. So he refused to stop. Doubt was pushed aside, worry was pushed aside. There was only the next vine, the next step, and the path ahead. At last, after 1 year and 2 months, something appeared beyond the endless entanglement. He sat inside an enormous cage, while every vine spreading throughout the realm converged upon its exterior.
Finally, I found you.
For 1 year and 2 months, Chu Feng had continuously cut through those vines. He had not eaten a single grain of rice, had not drunk a single drop of water, and had not slept even once. Most astonishing of all, the sword in his hand had scarcely stopped moving throughout that entire ordeal. His body had reached its limit. Exhaustion weighed upon him so heavily that collapse seemed only moments away. Yet the sight of Long Lin changed everything. The goal that had remained distant for 14 months was finally before his eyes, and from somewhere deep within, Chu Feng forced out another reserve of strength. This was no miraculous recovery. Chu Feng was still exhausted. What changed was his will. When the objective finally became tangible, determination temporarily overpowered the limits his body had been screaming at him for months to obey. His sword accelerated. Slash after slash tore through the remaining vines, faster now than when he had first entered the formation. One final cluster was severed. The enormous cage, no longer suspended by the vines, crashed heavily onto the ground. Inside it, however, Long Lin remained seated cross-legged. His eyes were tightly shut. He neither moved nor reacted, appearing almost lifeless.
It seems I still have to break this cage.
Chu Feng raised his sword and brought it down toward the prison. But just before the blade connected, the cage moved. Several vines suddenly separated from its surface, twisted together and transformed into an enormous hand that seized Chu Feng's sword. Thunder erupted around him. The thunder armor appeared across Chu Feng's body, followed immediately by the unfolding of his thunder wings. His cultivation surged upward, and with it came a tremendous increase in strength. The gigantic vine hand resisted, but it could no longer completely restrain him. Then something even stranger happened. A pair of eyes appeared above the cage.
Heavenly Bloodline, who are you? Why are you here?
Chu Feng's expression changed instantly. Of all the words he had expected to hear from this mysterious formation, those two struck deepest.
Heavenly Bloodline, you are saying that I possess a heavenly bloodline. Who are you? How do you know that?
The cage had recognized something about Chu Feng immediately after he activated his thunder armor and thunder wings. That made its words especially significant. Whatever this ancient sealing power was, it possessed knowledge capable of identifying the nature of his bloodline at a glance. But the mysterious cage offered no explanation.
Do not save him, otherwise you will regret what you have done. Do not save him, otherwise you will regret what you have done. Do not save him, otherwise you will regret what you have done.
The warning repeated again and again. but it was far more than sound. A strange power accompanied every repetition, disturbing Chu Feng's mind and throwing his thoughts into chaos. His concentration fractured. The pressure inside his head intensified until it felt almost unbearable. This was clearly a mental attack, embedded within the warning. The cage was not trying to persuade Chu Feng through reason. It was attempting to overwhelm his consciousness until resistance became impossible. Remaining there and continuing to listen would only place him in greater danger. And yet the warning itself could not be ignored. A prison capable of recognizing a heavenly bloodline was desperately telling Chu Feng not to release Long Lin. Whether it was protecting the world outside, protecting the seal, or serving some other purpose remained unknown. But from this moment onward, freeing Long Lin was no longer merely a rescue. It was a gamble. Chu Feng nevertheless tightened both hands around the sword hilt. He had already made his choice long before reaching this cage.
My apologies. I must save him.
The sword descended. Its edge pierced directly into the cage. A sharp, cracking sound rang through the sealed world. From the point where Chu Feng's blade had entered, fractures began spreading outward. 1 became 10. 10 became hundreds. In moments, cracks covered the enormous prison from top to bottom. Then inside the collapsing cage, Long Lin opened his eyes. In that instant, the atmosphere changed completely. It was like an ancient, fierce dragon awakening after an immeasurably long slumber. An indescribably oppressive aura surged outward from Long Lin and swept across the entire space. The already fractured cage could endure no more. Under that aura, it shattered completely, its fragments blasted away in every direction. Chu Feng did not celebrate. Instead, instinct warned him of danger.
Xianxia.
The figure before him was unmistakably Long Lin. Yet the aura surrounding this Long Lin was far more terrifying than the one Chu Feng had previously encountered. Chu Feng sensed fatal danger. Long Lin had not deliberately released killing intent, yet an intense murderous presence seemed to exist naturally around him, as though destruction had become part of his very aura. That distinction was frightening. Deliberate killing intent could be withdrawn, but an aura that felt murderous even without conscious hostility suggested that the being before Chu Feng possessed an inherently terrifying level of power. The gap between them was so great that Chu Feng could not even be certain whether he would survive if Long Lin regarded him as an enemy. For the first time since breaking the cage, Chu Feng wondered whether this Long Lin even knew who he was. If he did not, then the person who had spent 14 months freeing him might be killed before receiving a single explanation. Long Lin slowly rose, but he did not attack Chu Feng. In fact, he did not even spare Chu Feng a glance. With a single leap, Long Lin vanished. A violent burst of air exploded through the realm. Space distorted along his path, while his oppressive aura lingered behind even after his figure had disappeared. Chu Feng immediately recognized the direction. Long Lin had flown toward the route by which Chu Feng had entered, most likely intending to leave this sealed place entirely. But one question remained lodged firmly in Chu Feng's mind. Was the being that had just escaped truly Long Lin himself? Or had Chu Feng merely released some portion of Long Lin's power that had been sealed separately? The difference was enormous. If this was Long Lin himself, then Chu Feng had just liberated an existence whose true strength remained frighteningly unclear. If it was merely sealed power, then the mystery surrounding Long Lin was even deeper than Chu Feng had imagined. Either possibility made the cage's warning impossible to forget. Before Chu Feng could examine the matter further, another change occurred. The pressure that had burdened him for 1 year and 2 months began rapidly fading away. The restraints upon his body loosened, the suppression over his dantian and soul disappeared. His strength flowed freely once more. That final change confirmed just how deeply the entire realm had been connected to Long Lin's imprisonment. Once the cage was broken and Long Lin departed, the force suppressing Chu Feng collapsed with it. The seal had served its purpose for an unknown length of time, and now, because of Chu Feng, that purpose had ended. Chu Feng had succeeded in the task he came to accomplish, but the words of the ancient cage still hung over everything. Do not save him, or you will regret it. Whether that warning would become prophecy was something only the events beyond this sealed world could reveal. The Azure Dragon dashing technique finally answered Chu Feng's call. After countless failed attempts and an ordeal that had stretched across what felt like an eternity, azure radiance surged beneath his feet, gathering into the majestic form of a dragon.
Azure Dragon dashing technique.
This time, it worked. Chu Feng stepped onto the Azure Dragon, and man and dragon shot forward together, racing toward the entrance through which he had first arrived. Joy surged through his chest. 1 year and 2 months. That was how long he had struggled inside this mysterious world before finally succeeding. No outsider could truly understand what that success meant to him, because only Chu Feng knew how many failures, how much pressure, and how much perseverance had been buried inside those 14 months. For Chu Feng, mastering the technique was more than learning another martial skill. It proved once again that when talent reached its limit, persistence could force open a path that talent alone could not. A year and 2 months of relentless refinement had transformed failure into instinct. But just as triumph reached its peak, thunderous explosions erupted from every direction. The isolated world trembled. Space itself began to convulse, and waves of destructive force rolled through the surroundings.
Crap! Exclamation! This place is collapsing. I have to get out before it completely falls apart.
Chu Feng instantly understood the danger. He clenched his teeth and poured everything he had into the Azure Dragon dashing technique. The dragon beneath him accelerated, tearing through the unstable space as he pushed toward the exit with every shred of strength remaining. This was no ordinary sealed chamber. It was an independent space created by an existence whose strength Chu Feng could not measure. If he remained inside when it collapsed, he would have to endure the destructive backlash of the shattered spatial world itself. And there was a terrifying rule behind such a collapse. The mightier the creator, the more horrifying the destruction left behind. Judging from the complexity of this world, Chu Feng knew that being caught inside might not merely leave him wounded. It could erase him completely. The world shook harder. Destruction chased him from behind. Yet after one desperate burst of speed after another, the gate finally appeared before him. The instant Chu Feng saw it, complicated emotions flooded his heart. For 14 long months, that gate had represented escape, reunion, and the world he had left behind. Now it stood within reach. Without hesitating for even a heartbeat, Chu Feng charged through. The collapsing world vanished behind him. Familiar scenery returned. Familiar figures stood before him. In that instant, it felt as though a veil had suddenly been torn away from his eyes.
Chu Feng, are you all right?
Bai Li Xuankong, Nangong Longjian, and the others immediately rushed toward him. Their expressions were filled with concern as they examined him from head to toe. Even Lord Liangwe quickly produced a medicinal pellet meant for recovering from injuries and offered it to him. Yet Chu Feng only stared at them in bewilderment. Something was wrong. He had been gone for an entire year and 2 months, yet Bai Li Xuankong, Nangong Longjian, and everyone else looked exactly as they had before he entered. Even the surroundings seemed frozen in precisely the same state. Then Chu Feng remembered himself. During those 14 months, his hair had grown disorderly, and a beard had appeared across his face. His hair was still messy now, but when his fingers passed across his chin, there was nothing there. He had never shaved inside that world. The beard could not simply have vanished. That single inconsistency overturned Chu Feng's understanding of everything he had just experienced. Either the 14 months had been an illusion, or the mysterious space followed laws completely different from the outside world.
How long was I inside?
Nangong Longjian and the others looked at him in confusion. To them, the question itself seemed strange.
There is no night to keep wondering. You were not inside for long. Only a split-second passed.
A split second.
Shock flashed through Chu Feng's eyes, but when he turned toward Long Lin, an even greater revelation struck him. Long Lin looked almost unchanged on the surface, yet his gaze was different. His state of mind was different. Even the aura surrounding him possessed a completeness that had not been there before. It was the same presence Chu Feng had encountered from the other Long Lin inside that isolated space. The two had fused. The Long Lin standing before him now was no incomplete fragment. He was the whole Long Lin, the true Long Lin.
I understand now.
A smile appeared on Chu Feng's face. The mysterious world had been far more extraordinary than he had imagined. It had not merely isolated itself from the outside world, it had altered the flow of time. 14 months had passed for Chu Feng within that space. Outside, only an instant had gone by. Whatever happened within that isolated realm had existed beneath an entirely different rhythm of time. Chu Feng could not determine the principle behind it. He did not even know whether his physical body had truly entered, or whether only his consciousness had been drawn inside. Yet those questions could not diminish the astonishing nature of what he had witnessed. A cultivation space capable of changing time was a treasure beyond ordinary measurement. If a cultivator could spend hundreds or even thousands of years training inside while only days or years passed outside, the advantage would overturn the normal limitations of cultivation itself. Chu Feng immediately understood its value to him personally. Martial skills that normally required years of refinement could potentially be mastered inside, while only a brief instant passed in the real world. For someone with Chu Feng's comprehension, such a place would have been almost unfair. Give him enough time within it, and techniques that were supposed to demand years of painstaking practice could become weapons he possessed before an enemy even realized he had begun training them. But before Chu Feng could dwell any further on that possibility, Yao'er suddenly noticed something alarming.
What's happening is the tree withering. It was perfectly fine before.
The enormous tree was rapidly losing its vitality. Yao'er reached toward it with deep concern, gently touching the ancient trunk that had meant so much to her. Her cultivation had advanced because of the giant tree's power. To Yao'er, it was not merely part of the landscape. It was something toward which she carried genuine attachment and gratitude.
Uncle Long Lin, please do something. The tree is going to die.
Yao'er's eyes grew wet with anxiety, but Long Lin remained calm.
Yao'er, I cannot save it. In fact, no one can.
There was not the slightest regret in Long Lin's expression regarding the tree's destruction. Chu Feng frowned faintly.
So it really is being destroyed.
His hope of returning to that extraordinary space to train vanished almost immediately. Everything pointed toward a direct connection between the enormous tree and the isolated world. Once the space collapsed, the tree began to wither. When the tree died, that altered time realm would disappear with it. The decisive detail was Long Lin's inability to stop it. If even the now complete Long Lin could not preserve the tree or the space tied to it, then Chu Feng's dream of turning that realm into a permanent cultivation ground was already impossible. Chu Feng naturally felt regret, yet he was not overwhelmed by sorrow. After all, that mysterious space had been filled with tremendous pressure. Surviving inside it had never been easy. The more he considered it, the more he suspected that ordinary cultivators might not even survive after entering. That also explained something important. Long Lin had ignored many powerful experts and specifically sought Chu Feng's help. The space was clearly not a convenient training ground available to anyone. Entering it demanded qualities that raw cultivation alone might not provide. Chu Feng then turned his attention back to the matter that had brought him there in the first place.
Xianxia, it seems I successfully completed the task you entrusted to me.
Baili Xuankong, Nangong Longjian, and the others were stunned. From their perspective, Chu Feng had stepped through the gate and returned almost immediately. His hair was disordered and his face was pale, making it obvious that he had endured something severe, but almost no time had passed. How could he possibly have completed Long Lin's mysterious task in the span of a single instant? To everyone outside, Chu Feng's achievement looked almost miraculous. They had witnessed only the result, not the 14 months of struggle hidden behind that single split second. That contrast made the altered time-space even more astonishing. Long Lin gave a firm nod.
Yes, you completed it, and you did so beautifully. Yao'er is free now.
With those words, Long Lin produced a book and handed it to Chu Feng.
You helped me, so naturally I will not allow your efforts to go unrewarded. This is a heaven taboo martial skill. It is very suitable for the current you.
Thank you, Xianxia.
Chu Feng accepted without hesitation. A heaven taboo martial skill was already an immensely valuable reward, but one glance told him that this particular technique carried even greater significance. It was complete. That meant Chu Feng would not be the only person capable of learning it. The cultivators of Cyanwood Mountain could study it as well. A complete heaven taboo martial skill was therefore more than a personal treasure. In the hands of a great power such as Cyanwood Mountain, it could become part of the sect's foundation, strengthening generations of cultivators rather than benefiting only one man. And Chu Feng had no reason to reject it. He had endured 14 months of pressure, mastered the Azure Dragon dashing technique under extreme conditions, escaped a collapsing world, and helped Long Lin regain his complete state while freeing Yao'er. The vanished time-space was undeniably a great loss, but Chu Feng did not leave empty-handed. He emerged with a perfected movement technique, a deeper understanding of powers capable of manipulating time itself, and a complete heaven taboo martial skill. Sometimes in the martial world, the greatest opportunities are precisely those that can only be entered once.